Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the virtual Red Bench, or back to the virtual Red Bench. I am Abby, the director at the Vermont Ski and Snowboard Museum. And although it doesn't look like it outside today, ski season is wrapping up, and this is our last scheduled Red Bench of the season. So thank you for being here, and thank you to those of you in the audience that have continuously tuned in. With this season coming to an end, I've been reflecting on the past Red Bench series. It's been a really strange year. How we live our lives, how we work, how we come together. We didn't want this series to be another canceled event in the long list of cancellations we've all experienced over the past year. So not knowing what to expect, we did go virtual back in August. Without the physical boundary of location, we've been able to dream bigger, and with the help of a dedicated board, enthusiastic moderators, and gracious panelists, we've been able to host discussions that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. The real success, though, for me, is seeing our audience grow, watching you sign in from all over the country, and becoming familiar with those of you that continuously show up. It's been such a joy to meet you here each month, so on behalf of all of us at the museum, thank you. With that said, as a nonprofit, another metric of success does come from financial support. This series is complimentary. However, the donations from these events provide important funding that directly supports this series, but also helps us continue our mission and support our physical museum in Stowe. If you have the capacity, I invite you to support our work with a donation today, and thank you if you already have. As always, your donation enters you into our raffle for a pair of Darn Tough socks. $10 gets you entry, and you'll get additional entries in increments of 10. So let's say you donate $100. You'll get 10 entries and statistically stronger odds of winning. But whether or not you win a pair of socks, you're already a winner just for supporting the museum. But I do get it, winning things is fun. So if you have already donated, you've already been entered. And if you're a regular viewer, you've heard me talk about our membership program. With resorts and trails closed for the season, the member benefit book does lose some of its value. However, there's still immense value to be found in becoming a member this time of year. You'll find retail, lodging, and golf discounts in the benefit book, but I really want to bring your attention to the benefit you get at the $100 level or higher. We're a member of the North American Reciprocal Museum Association. A membership with us gets you free admission to over 1,000 museums across the country, including 15 right here in Vermont. You can visit our website for more information or to sign up. And as always, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. All right, we have such a treat for you all tonight. Joining us on the Red Bench is legendary Olympic ski racer Phil Mahre. Moderating tonight's chat is 11-time Olympic Games announcer and museum board member Peter Graves. I want to thank our Red Bench series sponsors, Sisler Builders and Vermont Ski and Ride, and tonight's event sponsor, Graves Sport Worldwide. If you have questions for Phil, please type those into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will get to as many of those as possible in the last half hour. And with that, Peter, I hand the mic over to you.
Thank you very much, Abby. Appreciate all you've done. Really, the closing finale of the season here for the Red Bench series, which has been very successful, where we talk to interesting people from all manner of ski and snowboarding. And tonight, on our final Red Bench of the year, we have one of America's best known and best ever Alpine skiers. That is Phil Mahre, who joins us, and you see him from his home in Yakima, Washington. Phil, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. We're really honored to have you, buddy.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I'm here. As a matter of fact, we had a little technical difficulty there earlier, and we were wondering if I was ever going to get here.
That's right. And Phil joins us via his cell phone, actually, on the audio. Phil, by every standard, just such a remarkable career. You're now 63 years old, live in the area that you grew up in, grew up at White Pass, and your dad was the ski area, the mountain manager, I think, there. So both you and your brother, Steve, you were obviously on skis very early. When did you start? Do you recall?
Well, you know, I really don't have a recollection as to when I started, but we started skiing when we were 5. My dad was actually an orchardist, We had pear trees, apples, fruit, and he was on the volunteer ski patrol in the winter. And when we were about 5, he was offered the mountain manager's job at the ski area, and he was struggling as a rancher and decided, well, I'll be a ski area manager. And we then started skiing weekends with my dad. Whenever my dad went to work on weekends, we went up with him. And when we were 9, that ski area actually wanted somebody there 24/7, and so they built a house right at the base of the mountain, and we moved right to that into that house. My folks lived there for 27. I lived there for about 9, and then I moved back to the valley. I was spending about 250 days a year on snow, and I didn't need to live in it when I got home, so I moved back to the Yakima Valley.
And was there a ski club there, Phil, at the time that you got plugged into?
Yes, well, I mean, we had a little local club there at the ski area, and we were actually involved in it. It started out in Mighty Mites, and then it became the Buddy Warner League. And then went on to, USSA and the FIS and on to the World Cup circuit. So, but it started off, basically playing there in our home area. We usually went to 2 races away from our area a year. One was at Crystal Mountain, Washington. It was called the Cherry Tree Charger. It was on Washington's birthday. The other was on Easter Sunday at Stevens Pass. It was the Steve Madison small fry race, and everybody got a prize, whether you fell, didn't finish, whatever. You got crying towels, baseball mitts. There was a local sporting goods shop that gave out awards or the prizes and stuff. And I mean, you get a bar of wax or a crying towel or, like I said, a baseball mitt, baseball bat, anything that they could offer, and it was just a fun event.
So, kind of getting into it early, there was sort of a holistic approach to your skiing. I mean, did that include a lot of free skiing, Phil, or did you start running gates at a pretty early age?
I mean, we just skied. If the mountain was open, we were out skiing and chasing our older brothers and sisters and so forth. But our favorite run was the one that went from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, right under the lift. It was called Chair Run. It was the shortest way to the bottom. It was the quickest way to the bottom, but it was also the steepest way to the bottom as well. But we just had fun more than anything. And when courses were set, we were usually in them. I mean, I love going around a pole, but we also, skied down through the trees, had trails through the trees and all the little jumps and what have you. And we just played. Skiing was, our life. And it's funny because when we went to school, we were 40 miles from school, so we did all our homework on the school bus. It was an hour and 15 bus ride. So you had an hour and a half, 2.5 hours to do your homework. So when we got home, we just went out and played in the snow. And there was we got a lot of snow. I mean, it was typical year was 10 to 15 feet in the base area, and so the ski lift had ramps that you actually had to hike up. So you didn't have to clear off all the snow with snow caps and stuff when you got that much snow, or you skied down to get on the lift. You had to hike up these ramps. And well, there was a ramp right in front of our house. We could probably get about 8 gates on it. And Steve and I would go out there for hours on end. And we got a stopwatch. And of course, we were always cheating one another. You wouldn't start it when they started, or you'd start early and finish late. So you always beat them. But it was just a lot of fun, just, playing in the snow. And as you said, going to Jimmy's house is not an everyday occurrence because our friends were 40 miles away.
Right. Oh, that's cool. A great environment. You debuted, on the World Cup December 5th of 1975. You were 18 years old. What was it like going, from junior and junior national races and regional races to stepping into the gate at a World Cup at 18?
Racing was racing for me. And I remember going to Europe. I think a lot of people, I actually remember being in a training camp in Killington, Vermont. Mm-hmm. And one of my teammates, he'd been in Europe the year before. I had broken my leg for 2 years and missed this, 74 and 75 seasons. But he had been in Europe, and Stenmark was coming onto the scene at the point, and he came, oh, there's a 16-year-old kid, he's just phenomenal, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, come on, you know, he can't be that big of a deal. And at the time, I was basically the same age as Ingemar. I'm a year younger, but I just remember going over there, and I think everybody viewed the Europeans as, oh, they're the greatest, you know, and I think a lot of people have heroes that they look up to, for instance, in their sport. And I never really, I never looked up to, like, and said, oh, you know, Gustavo Turney, oh, you know, and idolized him, because if you idolize somebody, you're never going to be able to beat them. I mean, because you idolize them, they're above you. And I always, I remember when we were young, we had some Frenchmen that came to our local ski area, and they ran the ski school, and they would actually go out during their lunch break and ski with Steve and I and help coach us. And they said, you guys could ski with anybody in Europe right now at this age, when we were 12 or 13. And so there was, I think we were gifted, obviously, and we also pushed one another to greater heights. And so when I went there when I was 18, I wasn't really in awe of anything. You know, we were in Val d'Isère. You know, I started in the 50s or 60s, and big ruts. And, you know, you come down and you're in the top 10 or whatever. It was just like skiing at home, really. Didn't really feel any different.
Well, and you had 9 World Cup seasons, Phil, and during that amassed 27 World Cup wins. You were on the World Cup from 76 to 84. And you were, among other things as well, an Olympic gold and silver medalist. So extraordinary. And in addition to that, and this is where I want to go next, starting in 1978, you finished in the top 3 in the World Cup overall standings for 6 consecutive years, and you won 81, 82, 83 overall. And I remember looking back and hearing you guys, both you and your brother, talk about, and I think I'm right on this, that you felt the World Cup was really the most important thing, because it really rewarded season-long consistency. Is that the posture that you had about looking at the 5th overall World Cup?
Yes, I mean, obviously, I think if you ask any ski racer, the overall World Cup title is the granddaddy of them all. Olympic gold medals, obviously, or world, or even gold world championship medals are cherished, but they don't carry the same weight in the ski racing world. To be competitive for a full season, 4 or 5 months, over 30 or 40 events, and to come out on top is really what everybody kind of measures you as. And anybody can get lucky once. There's a lot of people that have won Olympic gold and never won any other international competition in their career. So it's a test, a true test of a champion, and it takes a lot of hard dedication and work and perseverance, really, to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were on countless world championship teams, 3 Olympic teams, 76, 80 in Lake Placid, 84 in Sarajevo, gold in slalom in Sarajevo, silver in slalom in Lake Placid. What were the meaning of those? Yes, it's a one-day event, but those Olympic medals, Phil, I'm sure in many ways, although you've always remained the same down-to-earth guy, I think, that you always were. But did the Olympic medals change your life in some more profound way?
Well, obviously, I think they have a greater impact as far as the general public is involved, is concerned. Most people don't watch the World Cup. Skiers, people that are interested in ski racing watch it, but it's hard to find on TV. The other thing is every 4 years when the Olympics roll around, everybody's watching the Olympic Games. And so if you win an Olympic gold medal, you're kind of a household name. and it becomes a much bigger factor. But I've been fortunate. Once again, I consider I've been blessed over the course of my career, over the course of my life, really. And yes, my Olympic gold medal probably opened up doors or gave me opportunities that I wouldn't have ever had that not happened. But you can't base your life on one day and really a minute and a half of your life, really, when it's all said and done. There's obviously a lot of work and stuff that goes into it. But an Olympic Games is, 16 days. You usually have 2 or 3 events. You have a window of opportunity of about 2 or 3 hours that day, any given day, of which you use about a minute and a half or 2 minutes, and you really can't base your life on that. But I think that all my Olympic Games are a little bit different. My first one in Innsbruck, I'd broken my leg twice within a year right before that. So I missed basically a year and a half or 2 years of skiing prior to those games. So I don't feel was at the top of my game there, but I was young. I was 18. 4 years later, Lake Placid, home turf, 4 years of international experience. Anything was possible. Unfortunately, I broke my leg very severely the year before the games in Lake Placid. And so going into those games, I can't say I was really at the top of my game once again, coming back from that injury. So Sarajevo was the only games that I went into having not been injured the year prior. And yet I wasn't on the top of my game going into Sarajevo. And I think that stems because I knew there were 2 things going to happen in 1984. One was retirement, and the other one was going to be my last Olympics.
Yeah. And of course, you really shattered your left ankle. Richard Stedman operated on you as he was really coming into fame as an orthopedic surgeon. And so you had some untimely injuries that looking back, how do you assess all that, Phil?
Well, I think my first injury from skiing was I got caught in an avalanche and broke my leg, my ankle, a boot top fracture, both bones. It was 4 days before I was supposed to leave to Europe, go to Europe for my first international competitions, or first year on the World Cup. It was probably the good Lord telling me that I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Probably had the talent, but not maybe the mental fortitude that was going to be necessary.
Yeah.
And then, I re-break that leg 9 months later, getting off a playground slide. Maybe I hadn't learned my lesson in those 9 months. But it made me hungry. And then Lake Placid was a tough one. I'd fallen so much harder. I've been, falling so much harder than that, just in training. And but I knew my leg was broken before I hit the ground.
Yeah.
Didn't really hurt that much until I realized I was going to have surgery. Then it became a little bit of a different animal. And then, but we were in Lake Placid. We called Richard Stedman because we knew we needed a bone specialist to do the surgery. And he said he'd had some success with that surgery himself. And so we flew out to Tahoe, had the surgery done there, and had a great doctor.
Yeah, that's good, Phil. As you've aged, do you have problems with those areas, Phil, or are they arthritic at all, or painful a little bit? I'm just curious.
My ankle has been awesome. I never really had much issues with that, but with age comes, I think there's things that show up that you don't realize you probably did. There are injuries that they might have been little back then, but they show up now. But I'm really lucky. I'm fortunate. I never injured my knees in skiing, and I actually tore my ACL playing flag football about 12 or 16 years after I was retired from skiing. And then, I've had some knee issues off and on, but nothing like my brother. He's had 13 knee surgeries on his knees, and I've had 3, I think.
Yeah,
I'm fortunate. I still get around and get to do what I want to do. You know, things are good.
That's great. We have some wonderful questions coming in, and just a reminder, we'll get to them at the end of our program here, folks. And thank you for sending them. We'll try to get as many as we can. Let's talk about Steve, your twin brother. You guys, I think, had a remarkable relationship. That was very close. And I also have these great visions from earlier Olympic Games, which were really cool. You or your brother radioing up to the top, letting them know about, oh, it broke down here, or no, it's good, or, blah, blah, blah. But can you tell me a little bit about that relationship? Because it seemed to be uniquely close and a real wonderful bond.
So, we're a close-knit family, first off. There's 9 kids in the family, so Steve and I are right in I fall right in the middle. I'm the middle child, but he's on the younger side by 4 minutes. But we've been close throughout our lives, and we think a lot alike. But in skiing, I always say I competed against everybody else, but I competed with my brother. And the difference being, when you compete against people, you'll do whatever it takes to beat that person or to take that person down. And when you compete with somebody, you'll do whatever it takes to make them better or help them become better. And that's what we did. And when he won, I felt I'd won. I think he was, and vice versa. When I won, he felt he'd won, because we did so much together. And we inspected courses together. We talked about courses. And when the one ran, people say, you guys are crazy. I mean, first off, Stenmark always said that's not fair. It's 1 against 2. But also people said, why would if you're winning at the bottom, why would you radio up to the top and tell somebody how to beat you? And that's, it's like, hey, it's my brother. And I remember in 1982, there was an event that. Yeah, maybe it was 81, but anyway, I had to be 3rd or better in that race, and I was going to clinch the overall World Cup title. And Steve, I think he was 2nd or 3rd the first run, and I was about 9th or so. And then the second run, I had a really good run, and I probably ended up, maybe I need to be 2nd or better, but I ended up 3rd, and Steve was 2nd or something like that. And the press tore him apart, because they said, how could you check your brother? He's going to win the overall World Cup title if he's 2nd, and you checked him. And he said, hey, if he wants to win the title, he's got to beat me as well. But, it's not like just going to lay down and let him win. But we had a great relationship, and I wanted to see him be successful. In 1982 at the World Championships, I'd been in the top 3 of every event leading up to the World Championships in slalom and giant slalom. And everybody says guaranteed 2 medals, but you just don't know what color. And I went out of both the slalom and the giant slalom in those games. Steve had never been in the top 15 all year in giant slalom that season. He was, I think, leading the first run, and I could have gone back to the hotel because I was done. And he asked me to come out and inspect the second run with him, because he didn't have a lot of confidence, and he cherished my ability or my prowess on giant slalom. And so I inspected the second run with him, and then I watched the 4 guys that ran before him the second run on the TV in the ABC TV trailer, and then I gave him a course report from my idea of how it skied from watching those people ski. And you want a gold medal, so it worked out.
Yeah, clearly to me, and knowing you guys a bit, you were superstars who never acted that way. There was clearly you had drive and determination and all that, but I think both of you wore that really lightly, Phil.
Well, you have to have an ego, obviously, if you want to be successful. but you don't have to tell people how good you are. You just have to show them how good you are. My dad always say, be nice to, remember where you came from. We had a saying, keep in the family. We had other sayings, be nice to the people on the way up. It's the same ones you see on the way down. And first impressions are everlasting. If you make a bad impression on somebody the first time you meet them, you'll be an outcast for that person forever. I put my pants on just like anybody else, one leg at a time. I get up in the morning, I go to sleep at night.
When I was in Sweden doing the PA announcing at the Alpine Worlds in 2019, I think it was, or 2020, I can't remember now, but Stenmark was there, and I had a chance to chat with him a little bit. And the very first thing he said to me was, how's Steve and Phil? And I just thought, after all those years and being such kind of noble warriors, I get the very distinct feeling he really cared for you guys. What did you think about Ingmar?
Unfortunately, I loved Ingmar, but unfortunately, you don't become great friends because you don't really spend that much time together off the slopes. You're in your hotel, they're in their hotel. It's not like you go out to dinner with them and stuff like that. But he was we had mutual respect for one another for what we did on the hill.
Yeah.
And we went to Sweden. It's probably been about 8 or 10 years ago now. He was it's kind of like our ESPYs over here. He was given a Lifetime Achievement Award, and they contacted us and asked Steve and I to come over, if we would be willing to come over and present it to him in person. And we, I was like, for sure. And we flew over, spent one day there, and flew back home. But to see his face, and it's the first time I'd seen him in probably 15 or 20 years when I went there, and he wanted to get out of his chair, come up on stage. Well, we made him sit there for a couple minutes until we got done with, introducing him and stuff. But it was just such an honor. He's a great man.
Yeah, well said. Well said. You had a long relationship during your career with K2. I think that was a great relationship all the way around. Yep. And any thoughts you want to share with us about that? But we're a Washington-based company, and you probably felt some kinship there.
Yeah, it was funny. K2 was they were instrumental in our careers, and we were on K2 throughout our careers at the international level. And we had the opportunity after the '76 Olympics. We had several companies approach both Steve and I, and we were promised the world by several of them, but unfortunately they were European companies, and we did some testing with them and stuff, and we were promised the world, like I said. But you as an American kid, I was going, okay, hold on a second here. If I'm on Fisher, for instance, who's going to get the best race skis? Some Austrian kid or me? And K2 was, right here in Washington State. We could drive to the factory in about 3 hours. We'd sit down with the engineers and stuff, and we'd design skis with them. And for instance, in 1982, the skis that Steve won the Giant Slalom on there were skis that I actually said, here's what I want you to mock up and build. And they did it, and then they told me they won't work because when they go flat when they're in the cold, when you put them in the cold room, the camber goes out of them. I said, when I'm skiing, there's no camber in them. They're reverse cambered more than they're cambered. And I said, let's go ahead and build them. And they built like 10 pair, and Steve won a gold medal on them. So they were good skis. But no, we were very instrumental in what we were skiing on. And technology moves very, very quickly. You can change it mid-season. You can change skis or change the mock-up of a ski and make a ski completely different. And we had a lot of fun with them, and they were very instrumental. Once again, when we were young, not a whole lot of money to go around when you have 9 kids in the family, and my mom and dad couldn't always afford what we were destined to do. And K2 stepped up to the plate when they ran out of money. Whew. We didn't know about it. They bought us our first contacts. They bought us our first motorcycles too. Most people, I think, I don't think they wanted to do it, but they felt that if they didn't do it, we'd find some ski company that would allow us to ride motorcycles.
And I remember you loved, Phil. You guys did a lot of motocross. I remember it was sometimes to the consternation of some folks too.
Yes, it was. And I think they realized it was better to have them on their product than on somebody else's product. So they bought our first motocross bikes, and a lot of things. You know, K2 is dear to my heart.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm going to just tell Abby, our producer, as well as everybody, probably cut out a little before 1 hour, just because we have so many questions of Phil Mahre, who is just graciously a wonderful guy, agreed to be with us. And it's always wonderful, to talk to you. You've done, in addition to motocross, you've also been doing, I guess, more recently, Grand America road racing, right? So you've done the 24 hours of Daytona, this kind of stuff, you know, that competitive streak's got to burn on, I guess, Phil.
Well, you know, once a racer, always a racer. I was always a gearhead, a motorhead growing up. We were always invited to the Long Beach Grand Prix, the celebrity event. And we could never do it because we were always busy with our skiing and stuff. And when I retired from ski racing, I think it was a couple of years after that, I decided I was going to go to school, driving school, see if I had any talent in motorsports. I won a national championship. I won a couple of drivers' titles out here on the West Coast. And we kind of parked all that stuff. We had two sponsors. We had Coors Light and Zurich Antifreeze on board. And they both pulled out of motorsports, and we were kind of high and dry there. I was making money in skis and spending money in a car, and something had to give. I was gone all winter, gone all summer. My kids were growing up without me, and so we just kind of parked the cars and got away from that for a while. But we're playing at it again right now, Steve and I. We have a little car that we built, a little Mustang, and it's all endurance racing, you know, 6, 8, 12, 24-hour stuff.
And I also wanted to ask, you actually tried a comeback of sorts, didn't you? Was it around 2006? Is that what I'm thinking?
Well, I'm going to say, let's see. I'm going to say it's 12.
Or maybe it was 2002. I don't know.
No, it's I think 13 years ago. When I was 50, yeah, so it's 13 years ago. So I was 49 when it really wasn't a comeback. I just wanted to go to the U.S. National and see because when I was competing, people always asked me, how long can you do this? And I said, I could do this till I was 40. And then I retired at 26. And so my 40s passed me by with kids and stuff. Now they're all grown. I said, okay, I can be selfish and do what I want to do again. So I said, let's see if I can make the U.S. Nationals at 50. Came close to doing it my very first year when I was 49 because it was a 2-year project. And then the next year, kind of the sophomore jinx didn't make any strides upward, just kind of plateaued there. I had more corporate things I was doing that year, camps and stuff, and I just didn't have the time to train. But then I said, I'll do it one more year. You know, I'll be 50-something for several years. And the very first race, when I was 51, I tore my knee up. And I just said, I can't afford to be injured anymore, and put it to rest. But I had no desire to be on the U.S. team. I had no desire to go to the Olympics. I just wanted to go to the U.S. Nationals and compete with the best we had in this country.
So at the end of the day, when you retired from the U.S. ski team, I believe you guys were tired of living out of a suitcase and the travel, and you had growing families, and
Exactly.
To be parents, be good dads are important to you.
Yep. Oh, yeah. But I mean, if it was just me, maybe I would have stayed around longer. My wife and I, we had one daughter, and then I had my son born the day I won my Olympic gold medal. My first son was born, and it was just time. The writing was on the wall. You know, going around a red and blue plastic pole was no longer the driving force in my life. It was my family and my kids, and it was just time to move on. And skiing was always something that I did. It wasn't my life. It didn't define who I was or what I was about. It was just something I loved to do, and I was successful at it. But there was so much more to life than, like I said, than going around a red or blue plastic pole.
Yeah. Okay. And along the way, you guys found time to write a book, No Hill Too Fast. You did the Mahre training centers, which are still going on, I believe, at Deer Valley now. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, that's correct. We're going into our, what I think, a 36th or 37th year now. So it's been a long time, and I still love it. When people learn something and they get excited about the skiing, and that you see the passion that we have for the sport, it's rewarding.
A number of questions that kind of get inside your head a little bit, but can you put into words the drive or competitive nature that you had, Phil? I mean, it sounds like it was just there.
You know, it's funny because I remember it was late in our careers. The ski team brought on kind of psychologists and stuff like that, and nutritionists and all that. And I remember the psychologist wanted everybody to take a test, kind of a written test, and what have you. And I said, I don't need to take your test. I'm not, but I'll take it just because you want it. And he basically came, when I came in to talk to him, sit down and talk to him about it. He goes, who taught you this? And I said, that's who I am. Nobody taught me that. That's just the way I've gone around about my career. And he goes, well, what you do automatically or naturally is what I try to teach people. And my dad was a jack of all trades. My dad, his passion was mountains. He was a mountaineer. He climbed mountains. He went to Everest when he was in his 50s. He had a chance when he was in his 30s, but passed it up because he had 6 kids at home and another one on the way. And he said, I can't do this. If I don't come back, who's going to take care of the family? And so he passed that up. And when he was in his 50s, he was offered the chance to go to Everest. And he sat us down all individually. And they asked us what we thought. And of course, he got our blessing.
Yeah.
So that was his passion. And he said, when you're going to do something, give it 100%. Because then you can be satisfied with the result. I just don't go through the motions.
I want to explore for a second the physical versus the mental, and it was Yogi Berra who said baseball is 90% mental, and the other half is physical. Do you agree with that, Phil?
Pretty much. I mean, 80% of skiing is mental. I think you look at it. There's 10 or 15 people that can win on any given day at the World Cup level. All those people have the individual talent to do that. Fortunately, there's only 3 or 4 that have the mental side of the game. They have both sides of the game. And because if you don't have the mental side of the game, you can't be consistent. You have to have the mental fortitude in order to be consistent day in, day out, and know that you're the best. Believe that you're the best. And once again, like I said, there's an ego involved. And it was probably the one thing in my career that changed the way, when I realized that I wasn't competing against other people, I was competing with myself. And it was just, if I figure out the best line or the best way to get down the mountain, then I'll be competitive, and I'll be competitive on a regular basis. But when you can waste so much energy thinking about the other competition, I remember coming from the Northwest, we didn't ski on a lot of ice. And so when I went to Europe and courses are watered down and just hard as it could be, I struggled. And I would go to a race that was icy, and I'd say, oh boy, Stenmark's great on ice, Wenzel's great on ice, Frommel's great on ice, Gustavo. And I would name off 10 people. I'd say, if I'm 11th today, that's going to be a great day. And you end up 21st because there's 20 guys that think they could win that day. And when I came to the realization that you can sit at the bottom and say, fall, fall, make a mistake, or you can sit at the start and say, fall, fall, make a mistake about your competition. And you're wasting all this energy on something you have no control over. You can only control your own destiny. And when I came to that realization or that conclusion, it completely changed my career. I became, like you said at the start, 6 years straight in the top 3 of the overall World Cup. It all came down to just thinking about me. And sports are selfish because they don't do them for anybody else.
Yeah.
You do them for yourself. It's all self, gratification and stuff like that. Yet there are so many people involved in your career, and it took an Olympic gold medal for me to see that. I remember going to the award ceremony in 1984 thinking, boy, this is going to be my moment. And when they start to play your national anthem, you realize that's not just your national anthem, but it's America's. Anybody that ever wished you luck, donated the U.S. a movement, whatever, is on that podium with you, and it's America's moment. It's not your moment at all. And all the thoughts that went through my mind that day brought my it was embarrassing in a sense, because it made me completely reassess my career. And it wasn't just me that did that. There were so many people involved in my career, ski tuners, coaches, family, friends, just everybody, fans. They all had something to do with your career or my career. And you have to be thankful for that.
I'm guessing you probably are glad that you didn't grow up in the era of social media, Phil.
Very much so. I don't own a cell phone to this day. I'm on Facebook, but I absolutely do nothing there. I think it's more that if I wanted to get in touch with somebody from Europe or somebody that competed with, I can find them there probably. But I don't do anything on social media. I think it's crazy, because now when somebody wins, it's instantaneous. Everybody knows, and they're tweeting about it. They're doing this or that or whatever, and it's completely changed. Sports, I'm a little bit jaded on sports these days, because I think it's become about the personalities in the sport, not about the sport. I remember thinking, I remember the Vancouver games. If you looked at the media's hype of those games, you would have thought that Lindsey Vonn, Shaun White, Apollo Ono, trying to think who else. But there were, maybe 5 or 6 people that you thought that the games were based around. And it became all about the personalities and stuff. And the sport became more, you think football, it's Peyton Manning, it takes on Ray Lewis and the Ravens. It's like, no, Peyton Manning's nobody without those other guys on the field with him. And it's completely changed the way I think the world thinks and responds to things.
Yeah, outside of that, how do you view modern ski racing today?
I've been watching. The last couple of years, I've watched quite a bit of the World Cup. There's been a lot better coverage, with some of the different networks and stuff. And it's just a different sport. It's all about equipment. It's kind of like Formula One racing. If you're not in a Mercedes McLaren or a Ferrari, you had no chance of winning. And that's how ski racing's become. If you're not on the best equipment, if you don't have the best equipment on your feet, you can't be competitive. It's narrowed the field drastically. It's become more of a power sport, strength sport. It used to be about finesse. And a good athlete can ski around inferior products. That just doesn't happen anymore. And so it's kind of a different deal, but they ski so fast. Slalom is just a different animal. Giant slalom is so fast now with all the shape and skis and stuff. You're just never slowing down. Mm-hmm. And it's become almost dangerous in some respects.
Yeah. Well, Phil, I'm going to turn to some questions. We have 25 questions, and I want you to have time to give thoughtful answers too. Yeah. So let me go there right now, and I'll kind of lead you through this, but I think some of them most of them are really good. So Phil, Bell writes to us, how would you rate in difficulty the slalom hill at Whiteface during the Olympics Also wanting to know, what is the steepest and most difficult slalom hill you ever competed on? Phil?
Okay, so I mean, Lake Placid, it's funny, that hill didn't seem that steep. It's a pretty steep slalom hill, but it's a pretty constant pitch. It doesn't have a lot of terrain variation in it. And I remember going back there 16 years after I retired, hadn't been back there, and I went back and I was like, man, this hill is pretty steep. Because when I was at the peak of my career or top of my game, it didn't seem very steep. But it's a a challenging hill because it's fairly steep, and it never gives you a time to rest or relax. Most difficult hill would probably be like Wengen is a really difficult hill because it has huge terrain changes. I mean, it's tabletop flat and then it's really steep in places. But Kitzbühel, very different first run to second run, even though they're set on the same trail, they have completely different characteristics. But then, their slalom is a very challenging event. It's probably the most difficult event now to ski. Back in the day, it was you had tech skiers and then you had speed skiers. Now the slalom skier is the odd man out. But it's amazing how consistent people are in slalom nowadays. If you have a field of 70, oftentimes you'll have 68 finishers. Well, they only finish 30 now because they do the flip 30. But everybody, most people will complete the first run, which is unrealistic, back in our day.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Doug Lewis, somebody we both know well, says, what's your favorite GS course on the World Cup and why?
They would have to be both in the United States, either Vail or Aspen. And I loved Aspen because Aspen had a lot of terrain to it, but it also meandered down the mountain. It wasn't like there's some giant slalom hills that are just, if you could set a corridor down them, they're just straight down the fall line and they don't meander. And Aspen meandered. It was on roads. It rolled down. It went left and right. And there were a lot of blind turns on it, or blind gates on it. Vail had a lot of, it was called giant steps, and so it had a lot of terrain. It was steep, flat, steep, flat, steep, flat. But so those were hills that I loved because they were thinking man's hills. You had to be, there were different tempos, different rhythms and stuff, and you had to change line, and you had to really be aware of where the course was going and on top of things.
Okay. David writes us, have you considered racing in USSA Masters Division?
No, I really haven't, because I think in Masters, if I'm not mistaken, you race in your age group, and I would want to race against the young guys. I wouldn't want to race against the old guys my age. So it'd be a lot of fun. Not to say it wouldn't be, but it just doesn't really excite me as the way. Once again, I would like to go ski against the young guys, the best the world has to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's see here. An anonymous attendee says, can you speak to your experiences racing in Vermont, Stratton, Killington?
Killington, we had early season training there. We trained at Killington every October, November, since in the mid-late 70s. But I think that Stratton Mountain, I won the giant slalom there. My brother won the slalom. Anytime I was in the States, I love skiing in the States. It's just a different, you're at home. Food is familiar, TV, fans, everything's in your court versus the European court. And luckily, being an American in Europe, you usually have a pretty good fan base because if you're in Italy, the Italians are rooting for Italians, but if an Italian can't win, they don't want it to be a German or a Frenchman or a Swiss or an Austrian. They want it to be an American or maybe a Scandinavian. And so we had a huge following in Europe, but there's nothing like skiing on home turf. And the East Coast, back in the day, back in our day, we used to stop on the East Coast every year. And then it just kind of went away, and it was all done out here in the West, Utah and Vail. Or in Colorado. So it's kind of unfortunate. I'd like to see more of it back in the eastern part of the country.
Okay. Well, here's another question. Can you talk about the time when you and Steve got your bibs mixed up at a World Cup race?
That was just prior to Sarajevo. It was in Parpan, Switzerland. And the Wengen slalom was moved to Parpan. It was a combined event in Wengen, the downhill and the slalom. I was running downhill and slalom because I was running the combined. And so Steve had gone to Parpan with the coaches earlier. I raced downhill, drove over that night, and we roomed together. And the coach came back from the Steve meeting and gave Steve our bibs, said, "This, Phil, that's yours." And they were 3 and 13, and they were folded over. I think he just saw the 3, said, "That's Phil's." And anyway, we had the wrong numbers on. I never looked at a start list. I could care less where anybody else started. I knew I had bib 13. And I remember standing in the start, and Steve slipped into the gate, and they said, "Now 3-time World Cup champion Phil Mahre." And I was like, "Oh, the announcer made a mistake." And then I got in the gate, and they said, "Now this twin brother of Phil Mahre, Steve Mahre." And I knew we were in trouble. Steve ended up winning that race. I was, I think, 6th, and we were promptly disqualified. We ran under protest the second run. Steve won the award ceremony. Andreas Wenzel was 4th, was now 3rd because of Steve's disqualification. He didn't show up because he didn't feel he should be on the podium. Paulo de Casa ended up 2nd. He stood on 2nd place, and Mark Giardelli, who ended up winning the race, stood on 2nd place. They had a picture of the podium there with the 2 of them on 2nd place and nobody else on 1st and 3rd. And then after the awards, Mark Giardelli brought the trophy over to our hotel and gave it to Steve.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Another person writes, and we've had many, Phil, that just really, they laud and congratulate you for being the kind of person you are, where they met you at Stowe or Killington or other places, and quite a few of those. So do know that you're held in, correctly so, in such high esteem. Somebody else writes here, did you save the infamous ski pole that cost you the gold medal?
No, I don't really have much at all from my career. Most of it has either been given away for charity events to auction off and raise money for somebody else's team. And that part of my life is kind of closed out, and it's moved on beyond that. Yeah, I have some things that obviously that are cherished, but in general, I don't have much of anything that's left from my career.
Okay. Another Quinn writes, did you ever think of playing other sports as a kid? I know you played football and were quite good at it, a linebacker, I recall, but what's your take on that?
I loved football was my first love. I graduated high school 135, 140 pounds. I played, like you say, the middle linebacker, and I wasn't going to go play college ball at that weight. I was on the U.S. ski team. The Olympics were a year away, and everything led to that direction. Steve and I pole vaulted as well in high school. I only vaulted for 2 years because I broke my leg my junior and senior year, but Steve vaulted for 3 years, and we were going to go back and vault the spring of our senior year, but we weren't enrolled in school the trimester before, and so we weren't eligible to vault. But he held the school record for several years. No, sports. Unfortunately, I love sports. But we were destined to be skiers because of where we lived. We played t-ball, we played baseball when we were young, but when we moved to the ski area at 9, there was no longer a possibility of playing baseball or playing any sport, for instance, at a young age, because my parents weren't going to drive 40 miles and take you to some sporting event. And so then when we got into high school or in school, there were some school sports, and we were old enough to drive or whatever, or hitchhike home. We hitchhiked home from football practice numerous times. Just put a sign out, home from football practice, and Unfortunately, sports there were certain sports that we were able to participate in, and others that we couldn't. But I love all sports. I can't say all sports, but in general, I love all sports. I'm an active participant in sports.
All right. Quinn asks, what was your favorite place to race in your career?
I'm gonna say when I first started off. Well, I mean, Kitzbühel was one of my favorites. Also, Italy. I love competing in Italy. When I first went to Europe, I hated Italy. Just seemed like, oh, it's just dirty and it's just kind of run down and stuff. But by the end of my career, it was one of my favorite countries, and mainly because of the people. The people are phenomenal in Italy.
Yeah, and the food
But I
isn't bad
just
either.
it didn't matter, people often ask me, "Where's your favorite place to ski?" Or what's the best ski area? I saw two trails at most ski areas, one to train on and one to race on. So I'm the wrong person to ask about that. And for me, skiing is skiing. It doesn't matter whether it's bulletproof ice or 3 feet of powder. I can deal with it and I can have fun in it of any condition. And so skiing is skiing. And I tell people I'll promote skiing, but I will not promote a ski area. So I can go to some little place in Ohio or whatever and have just as fun there as I can anywhere else.
All right, great answer. Great. Jack is writing. Please ask Phil what he and Steve called Super G when it came out. And he says, and I agree why they called it that. So take it from there if you want.
Well, it's funny because Super G came about in 1983, and it really became about to give downhillers or speed skiers a second event to be competitive in. Unfortunately, they took it out of the Giant Slaloms calendar, so instead of having 10 Giant Slaloms, we had 7 Giant Slaloms and 3 Super Gs. Super G was scored as a Giant Slalom. It went under Giant Slalom point total. And in this country, we couldn't figure out 3 events, let alone a 4th one that looked like a 3rd one. And so I just said I will not promote it. I don't think the sport needs it. And I think they brought it about for 2 reasons. One, TV viewership was going downhill, and they wanted another event for speed skiers. But I called it Stupid G. Boycotted it, never competed in it. They said you'll never win the World Cup without it. Not only did I win the World Cup, but I won the Giant Slalom title without it. So just to prove a point.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Our friend Chuck Hughes writes, Phil, how much did you enjoy training on Cascade Trail at Killington in 1980? Was it firm enough for you?
Oh yeah. There was one part of that trail we called it Chrome Dome, and it was just like the top of my head these days. Very, very shiny and very, very slick. But it was you'd make 2 runs and resharpen your skis. Make 2 runs and resharpen your skis. It was just bulletproof, and it was probably great because that's how a lot of World Cup race courses were.
All right. William writes, Phil, even though you didn't race downhill very often, when you did, it was quite good. Did you ever consider becoming a downhiller later in your career?
I never thought about switching just to downhill, but I had the desire to win a downhill or be really competitive in that. And I did. I won some training runs. My best overall World Cup downhill finish was a 5th in St. Anton. But I skied the same pair of skis for 6 years because K2 could never make something that was better or faster, unfortunately. And I know that Franz Klammer said if you were on good skis, you guys would have won some downhills. So, but it's just the way that cookie crumbles. It wasn't all that important to me, but I think that if you want to win the overall World Cup title, you should have to ski all disciplines and you should have to score points in all disciplines.
Okay. Jenny Chenoweth is asking, Phil, am I mistaken, or did you and Steve race S2000 in the SCCA right after retirement? And what parallels did you find between ski racing and sports car driving?
Yeah, we did race Sports 2000. We actually ran in a pro series out here on the West Coast. I won the driver's title 2 years in a row. And I remember going to my driving school, and you're driving basically a street car with a roll cage in it. And they always say these guys are athletes, and I was like, no, they're not athletes. And then I got into a real race car, a 550 horsepower, 600 horsepower Trans Am car, and you can get into a lot of trouble very quickly. You can drive with your right foot if you want to, but it was an eye opener. Go 180 mile an hour. All of a sudden you realize these guys are athletes, and it takes a lot of hard concentration. And that was the biggest difference was in ski racing, you only look ahead. You kind of have blinders on, it's just the course, and then you have to concentrate for about 45 seconds or a minute and a half, depending on the event you're in, and then it's over. And in a race car, you're there for an hour, you could be there for 2 hours, and there's a lot going on. There's traffic, you have to look ahead, look at behind, you have to look at gauges, you're checking things. And I remember going back to the hotel and being totally exhausted, not physically, but mentally.
Yeah, interesting. Phil, somebody is asking, you had 3 World Cup crystal globes. Are they on the shelf in that room? Whoop. Hello, do you hear me, Phil? I'm afraid I don't. It seems like your mic is muted, my friend, on the screen here, as we're talking live with Phil Mahre, but I unfortunately don't hear any audio, buddy. I don't know. Phil, you can't hear me, or you can hear me? Can you call back on that number? Well, I'm quite not sure what's happening. This is the nature of live broadcasting here, but maybe the battery went dead on his phone. I'm not sure, or because Phil was joining us with a cell phone. He's attempting to call us, and hopefully we'll get him back. And if we don't, I'm terribly sorry for everybody. We did get quite a few questions in. Definitely want to thank everybody who sent questions in. They're very, very interesting. And this will be the final Red Bench speakers.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Hello.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm not sure what happened, but it doesn't matter. Let's keep going. Oh, I don't know if you answered. Do you have your World Cup globes on the shelf in the room you're in, Phil? Well, stand by again, please. This is so interesting, and I for me as it is for all of you. So I really hope we can continue it. It's been just a great opportunity to talk to a wonderful, wonderful guy. Another phone. It may be the battery went dead on that one. Phil was having some difficulty with his computer microphone, so we decided to take the audio via telephone. And it's worked out quite well. And it is certainly goes without saying, but we're thankful for all of you that have joined us in this conversation and supported the speaker series.
Hello.
There he is.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Okay. Are you up for doing a few more questions, buddy?
Yep, oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
David Strang says, and because we have so many of these, maybe Phil, keep these thoughts kind of short, but what's your fondest memory from your World Cup career?
I think the biggest thing is just, being traveling the world on somebody else's money and doing something I love to do. Fond memories, I mean, they're abundant. Every day was a new day. Every day was a fresh day. And so many friendships, were born there. It was just, once again, I say I was blessed throughout my life, and I was blessed to be on the World Cup.
All right. Doug Fuller writes, can you talk a little about your relationship with Harold Schonauer, one of your coaches at USST?
Harold was, he's my coach from 74 to 1980. And after he retired, if I was ever in a rut or struggling, I'd just say, what would Harold do, or what would Harold say? But he was my best friend, and he was my worst enemy at times. When I skied poorly, I didn't need somebody to tell me that I skied poorly. I was hard enough on myself, but he would. He would tell you that you skied like a dirtbag or whatever, and he knew all the right buttons to push. I'm very, very fond of Harold. He, to this day, we are great friends. And but like I said, he could be your best friend, or he could be your worst enemy. And the thing is what was said on the hill, what stayed on the hill. You didn't take it to dinner with you.
Yeah, and Harold has a big heart too. I mean,
yes, he does.
Peggy Shin, a very, very gifted Vermont writer, says, what do you think of Michaela's slalom skiing?
She's phenomenal. The girl is phenomenal. I mean, like I said, slalom is probably the most difficult event to ski these days, and that's her right up her alley. So it's phenomenal, and unfortunately, people are starting to figure it out, and she's got some real competition now. In some of these other young gals that are coming up.
Okay, thanks. Lori Wyman says, I guess to me, Peter, how did you get to know Phil? When I used to be an assistant coach under Mike Gallagher with the U.S. cross country team, and I think the first times I got to know Phil was when he was on the team, and we did Phil and Steve, a number of ski balls together and stuff like that. Yes, and always thought super highly of him. Peter, is that a photo in your office of Phil by chance under the bib? It is a picture of Phil and a few other people, Tamara McKinney and others who were at the New York City ski ball at the Pierre Hotel. Rick writes, do you recall someone at Whiteface on, you got to have a good memory here, buddy, February 22nd, 1980, that opened his big mouth and inspired Stenmark to move up from 5th to 1st after the first run? Well, that was me. I'm sorry.
I don't remember it, but I remember that day warming up. I couldn't make it 10 gates on a warm-up course and go out. And my whole thought process that day was, let's just get the day over with and go to the beach, because it was like, it's not happening today. And I put my race skis on and made some turns at the start, and everything clicked. It was like night and day. And, I made that first run, was leading by almost 4/10, and then made, 2 or 3 mistakes the second run to win. And it taught me there and then that not the best person wins, it's the guy that makes the least number of mistakes. And I beat myself up pretty hard over that result. It was bittersweet. Sweet because I was at the Olympic Games, and a year earlier, most doctors had written me off because of the ankle injury I had. And so it was sweet to be there, but it was bitter because of the second place. And it was not that somebody outperformed me; it was that I didn't ski to my capabilities. And so yeah, I almost retired after 1980. I didn't know if I wanted to continue skiing after that, and I took a whole summer off, didn't ski all summer, and went back at it in September.
Another question, and it was the last time we were together, Killington World Cup. What did you think of it, Phil?
Oh, it was awesome. Actually, the next year, unfortunately, it falls on Thanksgiving, that weekend, I think. And, we were invited back the next year to come back and watch it again. And as much as I would have loved to come there, Thanksgiving is a family time, and we just, elected not to go back. But I would come back there to watch that event any and all years that I've had the possibility to do it.
And John Thurgood writes, and I think we all who care for you so much, we are blessed, Phil, to have spent this evening with you. So thank you for that. Brad Williams says, what's your favorite run at Deer Valley, and also your favorite place to fish?
Okay. Well, Deer Valley, I don't know. I mean, there's a Deer Valley. We ski a lot on the lower mountain. Solid Muldoon is a nice hill. Big Stick, even Success, which is a green trail, is a nice trail. But you have Perseverance on the backside, Stein's Way. There's a lot of different trails there. They're all fun. They all have different things to them. But favorite place to fish, I'm not a big fisherman, so I'm going to just say my lake right here. I built a water ski lake on my property. It's stocked with fish, and then we go out there every now and put a line in and have some dinner.
So James writes, how do you view your relationship with the ski scene after leaving the World Cup? At 63, what is the scope of your relationship with the ski industry today?
It's funny, my relationship with the ski team, I have nothing but fond memories of my time with the U.S. ski team. And as far as my relationship in the ski industry, I have absolutely no ties to the ski industry other than doing mere training centers. I have no contracts with ski companies, and it's my choice to do that. I don't necessarily want to be out in the limelight and signing autographs and doing that kind of thing anymore. I'd love to go just ski with people and not have to peddle a product or whatever. So I just elect not to do that. But I love skiing. Have a passion for it, and I love it when people get excited about the sport when new things are learned, and hope that people will continue to pursue the sport. It's an awesome sport.
All right. Did you have a favorite event, Dana asks, between slalom and GS?
Oh man, I think that my favorite event was the one that I was winning at. On any day, but I got the most rewards from giant slalom, because giant slalom was the most technical event to ski, and if you won in giant slalom, that meant you were doing something right. Downhill was exciting from start to finish, but boring otherwise, because you make 2 runs in a day at the most, and I could make 20 training runs of slalom or giant slalom in a day. So, but slalom was a bash for cash, but giant slalom was the one that really stuck in your craw and said, if you won there, you really did something.
Okay, we have time, just a little bit more time for a couple of further questions, and then we will be wrapping it up here. Let's see here. Bear with me for just a second as I scroll down. Thank you for everybody who wrote in about how fortunate we are to have Phil with us. Really nice. Bear with me. Well, pardon me, Phil.
That's okay.
Yep. Well, here's one, certainly one of our final. Lexi asks, basically, and I'll give just a context of, wonderful career, marvelous career. Any regrets, Phil?
None whatsoever. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it just the way I did it, and I'd break my legs. I would, I'd get injured because that made me who I am today. The sport has a lot to do with the person I am in everyday life, and I think that the one thing I said was be better tomorrow than you were today. That was kind of my motto, and that didn't just kind of pertain to sport. It also pertained to just fatherhood and being a better brother, being a better father, being a better individual, husband, whatever you. And so it's something that I've taken throughout my life, and sports have been a big part of my life, and they've taught me so much that really pertains to life as well.
Phil, Mark Cousineau writes, how was your rivalry with the Crazy Canucks? They were a very powerful presence in your era.
Yes, they were. It's funny, Steve Potoborski, obviously a Crazy Canuck, and he was only a downhiller. He didn't really ski much. He said he beat me in either giant slalom or slalom, but I had never beat him in downhill. And it's probably true. But in 1982, he won the downhill title, and I won all the other titles. So it was a North American sweep that year, which was phenomenal. But the Crazy Canucks, they were a different breed, and they were, I think, I guess what you say, cherished or everybody loved what they did on the slopes. They just is a reckless abandon and just lay it all out there and see where the cookie crumbles and where it falls.
Well, that is the bulk of our questions here tonight, Phil. And again, we want to thank everybody for writing in and for listening. And Phil, after all these years, I'm still so much in awe of you and your brother, and not only what you accomplished, but how you accomplished it. And we're really lucky to have you with us tonight. And thank you for giving so generously of your time.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for all those that called in and made mention of their appreciation of my career and what I've done. I don't know. I always tell people, if you ever see me on the slopes, stop and say hi.
Well, clearly you've done that, and a lot of people have been affected by that. So, Phil, I guess you can stay with us for a second. My thanks to you. And in our Stowe studio at the Vermont Ski Museum, let's go back for a final wrap up with Abby. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Abby?
All right. Well, thank you both for such a lovely evening. Phil, thank you for giving us your time tonight. We're so honored and truly grateful, on behalf of the museum, and then I know everyone in the audience tonight. And to our audience, thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Again, please consider making a donation. Donations of any amount have a huge impact. We're grateful for the support. And as I said earlier, this is our last scheduled Red Bench of the season. However, stay connected with us on social media and keep an eye out for our e-newsletters because we're always up to something. Thank you again for tuning in. That's all I have for tonight.
Phil, can I, Abby, if you don't mind, our good friend and somebody that Phil knows well, Tom Kelly is asking, he said, I really would love to know where the globes are.
One of them is in a museum in Vail.
Okay.
One of my overalls. One is in a museum on Snoqualmie Summit here in Washington State. There's a museum, a ski museum there. Okay. And the other one, well, it's right behind me here. I don't know if you can see it. It's right back there, though.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got it. They're here. I got some of my more prominent trophies displayed here around the house, but there's a lot of them in boxes down in the basement. And it's funny. I have a lot of old trophies from when I first started skiing. So when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then they're in boxes. And I would like to probably reuse them, give them to the local ski club that they can give out to when they have a race. Say, here's a trophy that Phil Mahre won when he was, 8 years old or whatever, and they could reuse them.
All right. Again, thank you, Phil. And I'll this final time send it back to Abby again. I'm sorry, Abby.
No problem. Oh, well, thank you both again. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, audience. And guess we're going to sign off for tonight. All right.
Have a good spring.
See you,
Everybody have a
Phil.
good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.